Yeah, so the CCG update is something I've been talking about a long time. Mystery Egg doesn't really matter, but it's like okay. Furious Fouls is just a terrible card. Fetch makes sense. Fetch and Rewind should cost 1 mana each. To be honest, there's Rewind should cost 1. This going to 6 is like, this card's already annoying and it has a lot of tempo. So I don't think anybody's like, this card might see playing some sort of spell tempo mage. But like it was fine the way it was. Like a 4 mana 2/5 was perfectly fine. And then DJ Mana Storm needed to be 8 mana. Playing this on 9 versus 10 isn't really that big of a deal. The 2 mana makes a difference, but the 1 doesn't. Water Cooler Artist is just gonna make big spell mage even more annoying because now it's just like less mana. So now you can go Octopapa into a 3 mana Water Cooler, and then you have a 3 mana floating on turn 6. So like this card doesn't like, it's just, it makes that deck spiral more. This is a wild change. It doesn't matter. Archmage is actually pretty playable now, to be honest. It's a 3 mana 3/4. Your spell costs 2 less. So if you just have like you tempo, it's a 3 mana 3/4 tempo, and then you get an additional 2 mana every turn. So it's actually a 3 mana, like your next spell costs 2 less, and it happens every turn. So this is actually pretty good. Like this card's actually not terrible now. The Mass Merchant doesn't really matter. Like kind of matters because like the 5 mana versus the 6 mana. So if you get like a 6 mana hero like Rexar and stuff like that, it curves better into having to like play it. But like even if you play this on 6 and then you were to play the hero on 7, you'd still go the 5 mana hero and then the hero power in the same turn. The problem is when you play this card, it's a 5 mana do nothing. They didn't change that. And then the heroes in the past are heroes in the past for a reason. You know what I'm saying? So like they're not that good. And there was decks that revolved around making those heroes better. So like just create, the problem with this card wasn't the mana cost, it's the fact that it's giving you something that isn't that great. And then Treasure Hunter going to 5 is actually pretty good instead of 6 because the treasures are impactful and they're really good. The problem here is you're playing a 5 mana 4/5, again do nothing, and then you're probably playing other cards prior to this that are cheap. So the remaining cards in your hand are pretty expensive, which means completing this is going to take all of turn 6, and then playing the rewards, you're probably not playing them till turn 8 anyway. Secret Passage is a wild change. I don't really care that. Metal Detector 3/2 is what I said. It should have been from the start, or it needed to be a 2 mana like 2/2. They went with the mana keep, but the attack increase, which is probably all right. Renol, I don't care about. The Recycled Cleaver is a terrible card, and there's really no reason it ever should have came out. Like it's just bad design. For those of you who don't know, it's a 5 mana 4/2 Battle Cry and Death Rattle. Get a Slice of Bread and then get 2 to sandwich any minions in between. So you play this, it puts a card in your hand. When this die, whatever's in between your hand that's a minion, it makes them into a sandwich, and then you have to pay mana to summon all of those things that got smushed. But the thing is, their battle cries don't trigger. Currently, we're in a meta where like all minions have battle cry in every deck. There's no vanilla creatures. Death Rattle is just way too slow. You're paying 5 mana for a 4/2 weapon that you then have to play additional mana for to summon the minions. On top of that, you have to draw the minions that you want, and it has to be in between the two. There's so many problems with this card that like I don't understand whoever made this on the Warrior team, like who designed this, like thought this was a good idea. Well, like yeah, it's flavorful and cool. It's an unplayable legendary that people have to deal with in like a way they don't have to deal with it because it never sees play. Food Fight. This is, again, a card that never saw play, and they changed it. I didn't even know this was a card in a game, to be honest. I love Warrior, and this is just so pointless. It's a 3 mana, summon a 0/4 entree for your opponent. When it dies, summon a minion from your deck. Again, you're summoning creatures from your opponent, which a lot of decks right now have a ton of transform, a ton of buffs, and then you're going to randomly summon a creature from your deck. And as we discussed, most of the minions right now are all Battle Cry based. There's almost no Death Rattle minions that are impactful. And if you're playing like a vanilla creature, or like, it's just, what are you doing? Boom Wrench change is actually really cool. Mech Warrior has received no support, even though they keep making cards for it, but they don't make cards good enough for it to make it even memeable to play. Like there's a difference between a deck being like really bad, the deck is a meme but still can win sometimes but still bad, the deck being good, and then the deck being tier S. It's been like not even memeable. Like you can't even have fun with the deck and win sometimes because the shit's so bad. So Broomwrenth actually like helps the deck a ton for curve purposes and its ability to like trigger it more often. Doomkin is an annoying card. It should have never came out. Stealing mana from your opponent has always been obnoxious, and the ability for your opponent to create multiple Doomkins for 1 mana and then play a whole bunch of them is just, you know, when your opponent's at 10 to 12 mana and you're at 3. I don't think that's a very fun game of Hearthstone. And this Tide Pool People is probably the most broken 1-drop they've ever released in the past couple of years. It was played in like, I think 70 to 80% of all decks, and it was at 1 mana 2/1 battle cry. If you cast 3 spells by holding this, discover 1 of them. This is targeted discover on cards that normally you could only play 2 of, or even sometimes 1 of, and people were using this card to generate OTKs looking at rogue and stuff like that. So this card costing 100% more mana should hopefully slow down those decks, but they also gave it a health, so the card is still playable. It's just going to be like less quick, but it's still, I think, pretty good, and a lot of people will stop playing it, and then the good players will probably continue playing it, and then the bad players will realize, well, maybe we should probably keep playing this card because it's still good, and then everybody's just going to play it again. So that's my opinion on this, and that's where we're at with the nerfs. I would have liked to see more buffs come to stuff from this expansion that sees no play, like Furious Fouls, given that this card will still see no play, but I'd rather see like more buffs on stuff that is right now on the like the end of fucking horrible in meme. I would have liked to see more of these cards get pushed to playable but still bad, and then like all of the outliers on tier S, like Tidepool Hunter was one of the outliers on tier S, pull back to just being good, which they did do there, but I think we had a little bit more wiggle room here to be aggressive with the mini set just coming out. So anyway, what do you guys think?